everyone, and hopefully you've had a great Friday so far. Certainly feels like the weather is kind of matching the somber mood across the Charlotte area today based on the sad news we received yesterday of Kyle Busch's passing at the age of 41. We will be talking a lot about Charlotte Motor Speedway over the next few hours, next few days, of course. Nick, I know, and Danielle will have a lot more coverage this evening on WCNC Charlotte on all of that information. But let's talk about the forecast as we head into this weekend, because I know it's an important one, not just if you're heading to the Coke 600 there at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but for everyone across the Carolinas, and whether you're traveling somewhere else here in the metro or somewhere else in the Carolinas as well. So overall forecast trend, folks, is that we are going to be the driest, it looks like, on Sunday. But, Saturday is expected to be the wettest as of right now. Looks like we'll get kind of two big pushes for rain, the first tonight and into tomorrow morning, and then the second again on late Saturday. Now, the good news here is, and you will know this if you watched the show last night with Brad and Tim, but weather has been pretty consistent that Saturday would be the wettest and that Sunday could potentially be the driest. And so seeing this trend continue is something positive. As you look out there right now, you can see 64 degrees, a very, very humid day there at Charlotte Motor Speedway. They have been trying really hard to get the track dry because we did see rain here earlier. Again, I'm optimistic that they'll get some of their racing done tonight, some of the pre stuff, for lack of a better term, since I'm certainly not a NASCAR expert, although I do love the Coke 600 and the Roval. I do expect them to be impacted, though, by some more rain and storms later on tonight. You can kind of see those rain chances ramping up very, very quickly after midnight. And really one of those chances is really here very shortly. Here's a look at Doppler radar right now. You can see we have a big, really push of light to moderate rain that's moving into the Charlotte metro area really right now. It's knocking on our doorstep. I'm going to zoom in so we can see some of this a little bit better here. So think of where Charlotte's setup is, right? There's uptown. You can see some light rain in that vicinity. And then as you look a little bit further back here, all up and down I-77 toward Pineville, Lake Wiley, Berry Hill, most of Gaston County, and even creeping up right now on Mount Holly. Now, the good news again is that this is just rain, no thunderstorms within any of this mess. But that does also mean that here very shortly, Charlotte Motor Speedway will be dealing with some of the same. Now, we do have this tiny little area here of some thunderstorms down in, I don't know why this is jumping around so much, but down here in Lancaster County, you can see between Heath Springs and Westville. It's down toward Kershaw as well. You can see some pockets of heavy rain. Some of this does look to be training, which essentially means that the storms are sitting over themselves. So I would watch this area here, especially in southern parts of Lancaster County, here right on the border between Lancaster and Kershaw County, to see some heavy rain resulting in some minor localized flooding. Other than that, as we take a wider view here, you can see there are some more storms to our back, but all of this you can see down toward the upstate of South Carolina. We've seen a lot of rain and storms in this area earlier today, but essentially they've been weakening pretty quickly as they've moved closer to the Charlotte metro. It's really, really wet outside. We have a lot of humidity, so my guess is that a lot of this just has to do with, while we are very dry, or we are very moist, we have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. The dew points are very high. We saw a lot of rain last night and this morning, so I think that's helped stabilize some of the worst storms, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that we won't see rain, but a slightly more stable atmosphere means lesser updrafts, which means we're not going to see those big, tall, towering cumulus clouds. So rain essentially moving over us. We know right now, you can kind of see the timing there with the forecast track. Let me draw a new one since this was drawn a couple, maybe not minutes ago, but let's see if I can see my tools. There we go. So the rain has moved a little bit faster here, so I'm going to draw just on the outskirts here. We're still looking like right now, essentially for Charlotte, Huntersville, give or take about 7 p.m., Mint Hill around the same, and you can see Concord, which would include likely Charlotte Motor Speedway, between about 7:15, 7 and 7:15 that is. So again, this area is dry now, but certainly something I'll be watching as we get toward this evening. So let's talk futurecast for the rest of tonight. Tonight, again, that first big push of areas of rain and thunderstorms, some heavy rain possible even as early as tomorrow around 2 a.m. Now, similar to last night, a lot of this will be while folks are sleeping. Saturday doesn't get a ton of breaks, but it does get some breaks. You can see by lunchtime, we're still seeing a few storms, but not heavy, not widespread for everybody. This is my biggest concern when it comes to Saturday, is going to be smack dab in the middle of the afternoon. Folks are out on the water, they're out and about trying to enjoy their Memorial Day weekend, and we will see some areas of heavy rain and even potentially localized strong storms. Right now, we do not look to see a lot of severe weather potential here in the Charlotte area, but this would be the time period that I'd be most concerned about what we would call strong storms. So remember, severe weather has a very specific criteria. In this case, potential for strong storms. So think gusty winds near 40 miles an hour, heavy rain, lightning potential, and even some small hail. We had some reports of some pea-sized hail last night, so I think that could be a possibility as well. Here's 7 o'clock. Again, a lot of that rain and storm activity pushing toward the east. And then here's Sunday. This has been really one of the most optimistic things we've noticed the past few days, is it looks like the warm front lifts north towards just far enough away from us that we see some sunshine mixing in, temps on Saturday, Sunday, even potentially getting into the 80s. With that being said, here's around race time. You can see that the rain and storms activity itself is very, very spotty, very isolated. This will mean that could be a couple miles difference between someone, let's say, seeing a downpour in Harrisburg versus at Charlotte Motor Speedway, or a downpour down toward downtown Kannapolis and Charlotte Motor Speedway. As long as there's no rain or storms within an 8 to 10 mile radius, things will kick off on time. I am optimistic that things kick off on time. Not as optimistic that we get through all 600 miles. Again, all my fingers, toes crossed. I'm sure yours at home are as well, that we are able to get this race all the way through. We know it needs to get through at least halfway for it to be considered done. If not, they'll stop and they will restart on the track later on. Here's Monday, mostly dry for the first half of the day, but similar to what we'll see on Sunday, things will pick up by the afternoon and evening. So Saturday is the stormiest day. Sunday, a little bit less, especially late in the day. We'll see some of those isolated storms. And then Monday is kind of a copy and paste forecast compared to what we see on Sunday. Overall rainfall forecast, though, we know looks positive. This means multiple opportunities for rain over the next week and a half, resulting in the potential for as much as 3 to 4 inches. Not enough to take care of the drought, but it's getting us there, right? More opportunities like this means a better chance that even if we're not out of drought conditions, we at least look a little bit better as we head closer to fall. Here's that Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day. I mean, it's written right there. Charlotte FC at home tomorrow, 70% chance of scattered rain and storms. We do expect lesser coverage on Sunday, but I am still going to be watching some of those storms by the evening hours. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY, and we have a special guest, Robbie Berg, one of the meteorologists for the National Hurricane Center, to talk NOAA's latest hurricane forecast.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Live Weather Impact. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees with WCNC Charlotte, and really happy to bring in some of my one of my special co-hosts, that is. And the other, we love him, but you see him kind of every single night. Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY. But our special guest is Robbie Berg. He is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist for the National Hurricane Center. So Tim, Robbie, welcome. Great to see both of you.
Hey, thank you.
Tim, are you going to comment about the fact that I said you weren't
this,
special?
Well,
we
can talk about that later.
Another
Robbie
time. We don't want to waste Robbie's time. So I am in a great mood right now because of a below average hurricane season. I think everybody probably in this triple box is. Robbie, can you talk a little bit about how, I think our viewers at this point know that the NHC put out their official first forecast and it's calling for below average. Can you talk a little bit more about why the NHC did go lower than normal this year?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason, as people have probably heard, is that it does look like an El Nino is starting to form in the Pacific Ocean. And you might be thinking, why the Pacific Ocean? Why does that matter? Well, usually in El Nino, we get a lot of thunderstorm activity out in the Pacific Ocean. That then causes a lot of what we call wind shear over the Atlantic. Wind shear is when essentially the winds in different levels of the atmosphere are blowing in different directions or different strengths. And hurricanes do not like that type of condition. So if we end up having that higher shear, that would tend to suppress hurricane activity across the Atlantic. So because of that reason, NOAA has put out that chance, essentially a 55% chance of below normal, about 35% chance of near normal. Probably the best news there is that the chance of an above normal season is only 10%. So this would be great because it's been almost 11 years since we really had a below normal season in the Atlantic.
Yeah, 2015, I remember, was the last time we had like a big below average. I also think that the Carolinas, too, kind of felt like a sense of last year, since really our only impact was from Chantal. Now, Tim, maybe not as much of a since they got impacted by that, but after Helene, it was just such just a nice time to not be tracking something constantly.
Yeah, so, we hope it's going to be below normal, and I'm sure, as we've talked about, the caveats here are that a below normal season does not mean no hurricane season. There still will be storms. We don't yet know where they will move, and so even if you hear that forecast, we still really want people to be preparing this year like you would any other, because it really just takes that one storm to hit your community, and then it's a bad season for you. And we've seen plenty of slow seasons where there's still an impactful storm that hits the United States.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Robbie. And I think a lot of times people, if you asked them after the year whether or not it was a busy season or a quiet season, they might even answer incorrectly, because it only really matters how many storms move toward the United States or to their part of the United States to how it impacts them. I'm curious, as we have you here, we talk so much about El Nino. What other factors go into the seasonal forecast, whether it be the water temperatures, or are there any other factors that our viewers should know about?
Yeah, there are other factors, and that's probably one reason why you're not seeing a higher probability of a below normal season. One of them is that the water temperatures in the Atlantic are still a bit warmer than normal, especially down in some of the tropical areas, and that can fuel storms. We also look at the strength of the trade winds in the Atlantic. So the trade winds are essentially the winds that blow from east to west across the tropical areas. When those winds are lighter than normal, that tends to foster more tropical development as well, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. So even though the El Nino looks like it might be developing and it could be strong, there are some other competing factors that could still allow the storms to form. And that's why there's not 100% confidence in a below normal season, but that is the most likely scenario at this point.
And Robbie, the NHC does behind the scenes what we call experimental, things where they'll test out behind the scenes before they make them operational, where they're actually implementing them. There is a new tool that you guys are implementing this year that has been experimental in the past. Can you talk a little bit about that change?
Yeah, so we've been experimenting for the past couple of years on our cone of uncertainty, or our track forecast cone, and depicting what we're calling inland watches and warnings. So take a storm like Helene. We knew that there were going to be strong winds all across the Western Carolinas, and tropical storm warnings were issued for those areas. So we are able to depict that on our cone now, not just depicting the coastal watches and warnings. So that is a change that people will see this year on hurricanes.gov, our website, when they're looking at that track forecast cone.
A big part of your role at the Hurricane Center, I'd imagine, is getting people to understand the information that you're sending out, getting the public to react in the right way. What are the biggest maybe misconceptions or myths that you see every year that you're continuing to fight against?
Yeah. So continuing on that theme of the cone, one of the biggest misconceptions we see is people think that if you're in the cone, you're at risk of getting the hazards of a storm. If you're outside the cone, then you're safe. And that's just unfortunately not true. The cone really only tells you where the center of the storm may travel. But we know that hurricanes are big. Tropical storms and tropical depressions can be big. And the hazards like wind, storm surge, and heavy rainfall can extend well beyond the boundaries of the cone itself. So we really don't want people to look at the cone and think of it as a safe, not safe proposition. You really need to understand all the hazards that a storm is bringing and whether or not you're at risk of those hazards, whether or not you're in the cone or not.
Robbie, I know that, or I guess it was late last year, technically, NOAA had kind of announced that they were going to be utilizing some new tools and developing some more AI-driven weather models. And we've talked about, you and I, the AI models in the past, where it's not a replacement for the physics-based, it's kind of like another tool in our tool belt. Are you guys optimistic that, I guess, the combination of the physics-based models that we know are normally a little bit better with intensity and the AI models that sometimes have done better in the past with track, are you guys optimistic that that will make for an even, I guess, better hurricane season in terms of tracking ability?
Yeah, we are. Last year was really the first year we started to really get our hands into some of the AI modeling, and we saw some great success. The big story last year was Melissa down in Jamaica. Using the AI modeling, it helped us to make a forecast that Melissa would hit the island of Jamaica as a major hurricane 5 days before it actually happened. And a lot of that goes to the AI modeling. One of the things we do at the Hurricane Center, though, is that we really do want to evaluate every model that we use very comprehensively, and that includes comparing all the models together and understanding when a model does really well and when a model may not do very well. And there were some cases last year where even the AI modeling struggled a little bit. So I think this year we're going to continue to use those models, we're going to continue to evaluate, but we do have pretty good optimism that it's going to continue to make our forecast better and better as we move through the next few years.
I think one of the weirdest things about meteorology in the 2020s is just how public all of the models are, and everybody. My grandma's telling me what the GFS is saying for the hurricane. I mean, this is just kind of the where we are. So I wonder, from a public point of view, they might see a lot of information sources and say, gosh, these things just, are they even getting more accurate? Where are we standing with the accuracy as far as track prediction and intensity prediction compared to where things were, back when we were coming up in school?
Yeah, so for track prediction, it continues to get better and better. We keep seeing every year that on average, those track errors get better and better or smaller and smaller. And that's good. We want to be able to accurately predict where a storm is going to move. Now, single models can have differences in what they say about a simulation, what the forecast for a storm. One of the things we do is we take averages of models, and that seems to, over the long run, do better in helping us make those predictions. The intensity of storms, how strong they get, that has always been a challenge. But what we have even been seeing now for the past, say, 5 to 10 years is that we are getting better at intensity forecasting as well. And that includes these storms that what we call do rapid intensification. They strengthen very fast over a short period of time. We're not perfect by any means yet, but we are seeing the forecast for those storms getting a little bit more accurate year after year. So we think those AI models are going to continue to help us in those cases as well. So again, we have great optimism that we're going to get better and better as we head to the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you can only ask to get better every single year. I think that's the bare minimum, right? And you guys have done a fantastic job. Robbie, I do have one more question about anything new product service-wise. Do you guys have anything new that you're implementing that people will be able to see, in the forefront, other than the new, or I guess the adjusted cone?
Yeah, actually, so the cone that I talked about is new this year, but that doesn't stop our experimentation. We're actually going to do a new experiment with the cone this year as well. And essentially what we're doing is not just looking at our forecast errors in an absolute sense, but we're going to look at our forecast errors in the speed of a storm and the direction of a storm. And what that's going to enable us to do is essentially build a new type of cone that is drawn using what we call ellipses, not just circles. And so that is going to help us to more accurately reflect where the center of a storm may go. And so we're going to debut that this hurricane season. It'll be kind of alongside the cone that we use typically day to day. And people will be able to see it on our website. They'll be able to comment on it, and that during that experimental phase will then help us decide in future years if we should make that transition to this new cone. So our experimentation never ends. We're always trying to push the envelope, do new things, and so it's kind of an iterative process where every year we're just trying to do new things and put it out there for the public to see.
Yeah, we know the cone well in North Carolina. I know you know North Carolina pretty well, being a state grad. Are there any messages you'd have to people here in the Carolinas for this upcoming year? We see the forecast. Is there anything location-based, given the state of the ocean offshore here, that would impact this season's predictions, or just anything else for the Carolinas?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, location-wise, it's pretty impossible to know where storms that do develop, where they will affect. So we're just asking residents in the Carolinas and elsewhere, just be prepared this year like you would any other year. Also realize, I mean, gosh, the states, North and South Carolina, are now very used to storms, not being just at the coast, but also inland. Look at Helene and the obviously the wind and heavy rainfall and flooding in the western part of the state. Okay. Those states, you have to be prepared no matter you live at the coast or inland in the mountains or in the Piedmont. Everywhere in those states can be at risk. So just be ready for the season, whether or not it's going to be slow or fast, and then we'll all get through it like we do every year.
Robbie, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Obviously, people get a lot of hurricane anxiety here in the Carolinas. Again, like Tim said, you know all about that. But I think especially after 2024, there's a little bit more of that still lingering around. So we really appreciate you taking the time to kind of break down all of the changes and what's, maybe tweaking to become better.
Yeah, thanks for having me tonight.
Yes, of course. Well, Tim, we got a busy night to talk about rain out here. Robert's actually going to go to the radar so folks can see what's going on. But you guys have been pretty dry so far, but we're getting our second push, and it looks like that's going to be impacting Charlotte Motor Speedway here very shortly. What are your thoughts on the rest of tonight?
Yeah, it's kind of a flip-flop from this time yesterday, Brittany, where we had the storms and y'all were kind of still waiting. Now it's your turn, it looks like. We've got this misty drizzle in the wedge up here in the cool air where it's still 58 degrees. But what it looks like to me, kind of what's happening, it seems like, Brittany, is that the showers and storms, they're forming kind of in the sunshine down in South Carolina, right? And then they're moving northward kind of into the cool air, weakening as they do so. But it seems like eventually that'll kind of cluster together and you're going to get some rounds of rainfall that move up from the upstate toward the Charlotte area, into the foothills, into the Triad. But it's all beneficial. Anything that we get is beneficial. We'd like to get a lot of it, especially being the nighttime. If it could rain all night, that'd be great. But I think we have to wait a couple of hours before that really starts to settle in.
I agree. I also think it looks like, and I know that you and Brad talked about this last night. I was able to catch some of your live weather impact show, and Brad and I were talking about it in the Weather Center too. It also seems like we get this big push right tonight and tomorrow, you just mentioned, but then it looks like a lot of tomorrow evening storms are going to be, I don't want to say like the only event, but kind of the main event. It looks like it kind of takes up some of that energy, especially with the warm front lifting north, and that could actually lessen, it looks like, some of the rain that we see on Sunday. And at least Sunday right now for us, in Charlotte specifically, it's all about Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Well, absolutely, right. If you're doing a specific event, that's where you really have to stress, because it's so difficult to pinpoint exactly when these showers and storms are trying to move around. If you're just somebody that, hey, I want 2 hours of pool time this weekend, well, that's easier. I think you could probably swing that on Sunday, on Monday, and be flexible. But if you're trying to get that exact time frame to be dry, you are going to have some stress, I think, with the race or with the graduation party or anything, because these showers that pop up each afternoon, they're truly random in location and in duration. So you're going to have to roll the dice.
Yeah, even though we are going to, of course, see it looks like the biggest push right on Saturday night. You're absolutely correct. The race is going to be something. I actually forgot temporarily about graduation parties on Saturday. I think those are probably going to be more so impacted than maybe any other events. But yeah, even Monday, even if you're just trying to get on the lake for a couple of hours, you have to be aware, and you have to have some way, to track some of that mess. Robert had popped up there a picture from Charlotte Motor Speedway, where right now it does look like they're trying to attempt to get things underway. I know that they had canceled some of the previous truck race prep. I'm not that versed on NASCAR stuff. I just know I saw it on the big box and it said canceled. But they're starting to get some rain. I actually zoomed in on our radar here, Tim, and I put a little race car over Charlotte Motor Speedway so people would at least know where it was. I thought this was, but look, the light rain is coming. So we'll probably be able to see that on the camera here very shortly. You can see there Bruton Smith Boulevard. That's of course right off 85 if you're familiar with this area in Concord. Essentially just south and west of the downtown Concord area, and then you can see just northwest of Harrisburg. So the light rain is coming back, and I mentioned this earlier. We did a special actually at 3 p.m., Tim, about NASCAR that was previously planned for the Coke 600. They did end up, filtering a lot of that for Kyle Busch, but a lot of people don't know that NASCAR races cannot happen in the rain at all. That's it's not just a storm thing, it's a rain thing. And a lot of it's because rain is unsafe for the drivers going at hundreds of miles an hour, but they also don't have any windshield wipers on their car, which a lot of people don't.
Got it. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So I guess the protocol is when you get some of this rainfall, you get a passing shower or something, the track gets wet. You kind of start the clock, right? And you got to kind of dry the track. They have those dryers that can get around and kind of speed up that process on the pavement.
And and Brad actually told me that they'll actually legit go on the track and they'll put the markers where the cars are. So it's not like when I play golf and I try to meander my ball a little bit closer. They have actual people who are going out and double checking that you're going exactly where you're supposed to be. So yeah, it's not just a storm issue, it's also a rain issue, which I really didn't know until I moved here. And so I think that is an interesting thing about NASCAR that maybe a lot of people don't know is it has to be completely dry. That's why a couple years ago when do you remember when we had that wedge event on Memorial Day weekend? They didn't end up racing until Monday at 5 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the benefit of it being the 3-day weekend. You can always push to Monday if you need to. You don't want to. Hopefully they can get the whole thing in, but boy, it does seem like every year there's a weather headache.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new. Absolutely. And even if it doesn't feel like it today, it will again by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, it certainly will. All right, Tim, well, I hope you have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, whatever you are doing. And you at home, just hopefully you remember at the end of the day the reason why we have Memorial Day in the first place. It's to remember and honor service members who lost their lives. And so thank you so much, as always, for watching Live Weather Impact, and we'll see you guys back here on Monday.